Welcome to Melrose Unitarian Universalist Church. Our service today is called Next Steps, the Spiritual Practice of Change. Good morning. Good morning. I am the Reverend Dr. Suzanne Intruligator. My pronouns are she and hers, and I am delighted that so many people have come out on such a rainy, gray morning. It's good to see you all, and I hope that there's some more folks in the Zoom room. Good morning. Let's see. I want to start out with a hearty thank you this morning to everyone who helped with this week's election. Thank you to the poll workers and volunteers. I know several people in this congregation do that generally. Thank you for your help. And thank you. All right, that's worth a good hand, a good round of applause. I also want to say thank you to everybody who wrote letters in support of this election, who encouraged people across the country to come out and vote. Thank you so much, especially Ann Noonan. I don't know if you're here today, maybe you're tired. But I think it's wonderful that we had such a fantastic turnout, especially for a midterm election. To me, that means that more people participated, therefore it has to be more fair and better for all of us. So thank you to everybody who participated. And speaking of participation, thank you also to everyone who took part in our Next Steps process this weekend. We celebrate it with our service today. As many as 70 members of this congregation made time to speak with our consultant, Liz Coit, and some of them 2 or 3 or 4 times. You know who you are, Eric. Again, that participation helps the process to become more representative and therefore more robust and more healthy for us as a congregation. So thank you for everybody who took time. Liz will be joining us in the worship service. I'm going to split the sermon time with her today. I have a little homily about change as a fundamental value in our UU faith, and Liz will follow that with some specifics about the process she has led here in our church. After worship, you're invited to a follow-up Q&A with Liz and me in the parlor afterward, and we can have a lovely discussion there, so please feel invited. Next Sunday, we have a guest preacher joining us from California. But I will be here in person hosting that service, so I hope you'll feel free to join in whatever modality works best for you. Our theme will be gratitude, and we'll have a special story next week from our anti-racism team, who have found a way to tell the Thanksgiving story from the perspective of Indigenous people. That will be led by Ann Easterbrooks. So there's a lot going on in our church these days. I urge you to read the midweek update to get all of your news that you need and announcements. Thank you to today's usher, Mark. Thank you, Mark. And to our greeter, Mary Ellen, with help from Catherine. Also, our coffee hosts, Mary Beth and Dan Griscom. Without you, we couldn't do all this. Thank you very much. Now, it's time for our weekly moment of greeting. Let's turn and say hello to one another, give hugs or waves or smiles, and say hi to the people who are joining us online today. Hi, Zoom room people. Wonderful. It's so good to see you all this morning. I think we've had our coffee. Everybody's looking awake. Okay. I want to call us to worship this morning with these words from a favorite reading in the back of our hymnal. It's from the French author and fighter pilot Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. In a house which becomes a home, one hands down and another takes up the heritage of mind and heart, laughter and tears, musings, deeds. Love, like a carefully loaded ship, crosses the gulf between the generations. Therefore, we do not neglect the ceremonies of our passage when we need, when we wed, when we die, when we are blessed with a child, when we depart and when we return, when we plant and when we harvest. We live not by things, but by the meanings of things. It is needful to transmit the passwords from generation to generation. Now together we light the symbol of our faith, the flaming chalice. Here to light it for us is the chair of our worship committee this year, Eric Lambiaso. He will light it and lead us in our covenant.
Please rise in body and spirit and join me in our covenant. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. This is our great covenant, one with another and with our God.
Thank you, Eric. I'm having a little bit of a computer blip this morning, so please have a little patience with me. I would invite you to remain standing and join, please. Up and down, up and down. I'm mad with power. Join, please, in our opening hymn, which I believe is number 145 in your gray hymnal. This is a favorite of mine. It was written by the minister in the Reading Church just down the road from here. He wrote it in 1933 to celebrate a collaboration between the Unitarians and the Universalists putting together their very first joint hymnal. So you'll see that's the theme of this hymn.
Our story today is called Change Sings, a Children's Anthem by Amanda Gorman with pictures by Lauren Long. In this story by the young poet who dazzled at Biden's inauguration, a young girl leads a group on a musical journey, and they learn that they have the powers to make changes big and small. I can hear change humming in its loudest, proudest song. I don't fear change coming, and so I sing along. I scream with the skies of red and blue streamers. I dream with the cries of tried and true dreamers. I'm a chant that rises and rings. There is hope where my change sings. Though some don't understand it, those windmills of mysteries, I sing with all the planet and its hills of histories. I hum with 100 hearts, each of us lifting a hand. I use my strength and my smarts, take a knee to make a stand. I'm bright as the light each day brings. There is love where my change sings. I show others tolerance, though it might take some courage. I don't make a taller fence, but fight to build a better bridge. I talk not only of distances from where and how we came, I also walk our differences to show we are the same. I'm a movement that roars and springs. There's a wave where my change sings. Change sings where? There, inside me, because I'm the change I want to see. As I grow, it grows like seeds. I am just what the world needs. I'm the voice where freedom rings. You're the love your bright heart brings. We are the waves starting to spring, for we are the change we sing, where what the world is becoming, and we know it won't be long. We all hear change strumming. Won't you sing along? Thank you for listening, and the children may leave for Children's Chapel.
Every Sunday, we devote some of our worship service to quiet contemplation. Let's begin that time together by getting in touch with our bodies, shaking them out if we need, feeling our feet on the floor, relaxing into our seats. Let's breathe in and out together. During this time, we will enter into silence via our centering song. We sit for a few moments of silence, and then we speak to one another of our joys and sorrows, and then I lead us in a prayer. Our worship themes for November are change, and our third UUA principle, the acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. This month, we'll be thinking about the place of change in our lives, in our world, in our community, and how adapting to those changes can spark spiritual growth among us. Our centering song for the month is Turn, Turn, Turn by the UU Pete Seeger. Lyrics will appear on the screen, and Tom and the choir will lead us in singing. Join in as you like, and let the time guide you into our moments of silence.
A time to gain, a time to lose.
every week we share with one another the milestones of our lives, our joys and sorrows. I invite anyone in the Zoom room who has a sorrow to share with us this day to go ahead and type it into the chat box. Anyone here in the room who has a sorrow to share, please come forward. In sharing these sorrows, we open our hearts to one another and we allow the sharing to bring us closer in the bonds of community. I don't see any sorrows in our chat room today, and I don't see anyone here who wants to share a sorrow. So I'll ask us now for joys. Anyone in the Zoom room has a joy to share, go ahead and type in the chat box. And I see that some people here have joys to share. Please come forward and speak into the mic so we can all hear you and see you.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Kathy Sang, and I had the honor to work with Liz on this project the last 2.5 months or so, and I want to add my thanks to all of you. It is amazing that 70 or more of you individually spoke with Liz and shared your dreams and your concerns, and it was a lot of precious time, and we really appreciate that you did that. And we'll see what comes out of the report and then where we go from here, but thank you.
And thank you, Kathy, for organizing it all.
Good morning, I'm Nancy Nichols, and on November 12th, 1977, I had my first date with my now darling husband, Michael O'Connor. So love blossomed and the rest is history. Thank you, darling.
Hi, my name is Barbara Lambiasso, and this is a candle of joy and maybe slight parental trepidation. Adam got his passed his driver's test this morning, so he'll be out there on the roads.
Wow. This morning, that's late-breaking news. Wow, Sunday morning is a good time for that. Yeah, excellent. Congratulations, Adam. Oh, and Dan Franklin online shares joy for having our daughter Jay visit us from Troy this week. Mark, if you'd go ahead and light the candles, one for our joys and one for our sorrows, both spoken and unspoken. We light them as symbols of our caring for one another. Oh, having some technical difficulties today with our computers and our candles. Let's take a moment now to hold all these joys and these sorrows in our hearts, to remember and remind ourselves to reach out to those who are hurting in our lives and here in our congregation. May they know our care and our love. And thank you to everyone who shared a joy. You remind us of the beauty of living and help connect us to one another. We're going to pretend the candles are lit. Please join me in the spirit of prayer. This piece is called Prayer for the Journey by Krista Tavis. Spirit of life and of love, God of grace and mercy, source of all things that change us as we cannot change ourselves. We gather this morning as a covenanted community of spiritual seekers, united by our conviction that the wounds of this world can be healed through compassion, forgiveness, acceptance, and courage. And by healing, we do not mean restored to some mythical original purity, but brought to a new place with greater wisdom, wholeness, and liberation than could have been envisioned before. This community is on a journey, and we know that each one of us is on a journey. And all our journeys placed before us, forks in the road. These places ask us to make choices, saying yes to some things, saying no to others, grieving in what we must leave behind, rejoicing in the blessings, often unexpected, that come along the way. It is our calling to accept these things as a testament to our strength and our fragility, and to trust in the process, even as we fear the unknown, even when we see more clearly what we have come from than where we are going. The journey asks us to keep walking. Spirit of life, we ask for patience. We ask for understanding. We ask for compassion. We ask for hope and gratitude so that we may welcome our collective and individual journeys with open hearts, open minds, and open hands. Amen and blessed be.
This church is a self-supporting organization funded by your generous annual pledge. You may also contribute to our weekly collection plate, which we split every month with a deserving cause. Folks on Zoom can donate either way using the orange button at the top right corner of our homepage at melroseuu.org. For the month of November, in honor of Thanksgiving, our giving partner is Melrose-based The Food Drive. This organization seeks to connect the 1 million tons of food that goes to waste each year in Massachusetts with the 1 million people in our state who are food insecure. Half our collection this month goes to the food drive. The choir's offertory anthem today is Like a Mighty Stream by Moses Hogan and John Jacobson. Lift every voice and let us sing. In every song, let freedom ring. From every soul comes a noble dream. Let justice roll like a mighty stream.
Wow. That was exciting. Thank you. First this morning, I have a little homily about change as a spiritual practice and as a UU faith value. And then Liz is going to come forward and speak to us about the process she's led here in our congregation. And then I will wrap those two together in a prayer. So first, I think that if Unitarian Universalism had a patron saint of change, it would have to be Theodore Parker. Some of you may know that I'm a little bit obsessed with Theodore Parker and his legacy for us. He was the grandson of a Minuteman in the Revolutionary War. Parker was born in 1810 in Lexington, just around the corner from where I live now, and he grew up going to that big white church on the green. He studied with and befriended the so-called oracles of Concord, Emerson and Thoreau. But unlike those two, Theodore Parker didn't quit the church or go off to live alone. Instead, he hunkered down and dug in to parish ministry, and he brought insights from transcendentalism into his weekly sermons, and he grew one of the most influential congregations in U.S. history. He showed what is possible for us to do together in congregations, in relationship with one another. At its high point throughout the 1850s, Parker's Boston church numbered well over 2,000. Every Sunday, it drew 3% of the population of the city of Boston. In fact, they had to rent out Boston Music Hall, where the symphony played, so that he could have a big enough space to preach. And that congregation included people like Louisa May Alcott, William Lloyd Garrison, and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Plus, it included several people who had escaped from slavery. So Parker formed the Boston Vigilance Committee to protect free people in Boston from kidnappers who were operating under the Fugitive Slave Act at the time. Parker also funded and supported open rebellion against enslavers, even when that stance was deeply unpopular across Boston. This month, as we explore our worship themes of change and the third UUA principle, spiritual growth in our congregations, I think it's a perfect moment to hold up this example of Parker and his congregation working in partnership. In the decades leading up to the Civil War, when our nation was literally falling apart, coming apart at the seams, together they risked life and limb to stand for their principles. In his time, Parker pushed the boundaries of both theology and political activism, yet he and his congregation remained together in strong covenanted relationship. Over 20 tumultuous years together, they challenged each other and rose up together. It's a powerful example. Among theology nerds, however, Parker's real claim to fame, and the reason I bring him forward in this little homily, is because he wrote arguably the most important sermon or essay about change itself, and it changed our movement forever after. Parker's 1841 sermon, which was an hour long, was called The Transient and the Permanent in Christianity. It's taught in our divinity schools still now as one of the 3 foundational sermons in all of the Unitarian movement. Together with Channing's Unitarian Christianity and Emerson's Divinity School address, Parker's sermon helped to give birth to the Unitarian movement, to set us apart from all other mainstream Christianity and move us along our own unique path up to now. Here is its brilliance boiled down and stuck in a nutshell. Parker wrote, this is a paraphrase, but he said, "Our job as humans is to apply reason and logic to religious beliefs in order to separate what is transient in religion, namely human-invented forms like doctrines and practices that become obsolete over time, from that which is permanent, the eternal core truths that transcend time and place." Now, perhaps this is obvious to us now, but Parker was among the first people to say that out loud. He lived in the time before Darwin, when humanity was just discovering that the earth was more than 5,000 years old, that the Bible was possibly not literally true. Parker was inviting people into a brand new conversation, inviting them to trust science, to use their own ideas of logic, to engage with divinity and theology firsthand, to discard old forms that no longer suited modern needs. His speech was really controversial. A lot of people blew up. But as we know, boldness has genius and power in it. Parker's congregation grew. I bring up that speech today because the brilliance still shines forth. His technique survives the test of time. Our job as humans and as faithful Unitarian Universalists remains to sort out the transient from the permanent. When we read together a religious story or a text, we do so with a critical eye, holding up parts and pieces that seem illogical to us or perhaps might have been influenced by political allegiances or local myths. We question authority. That's who we are. That's baked into us. But more than that, on a deeper level, we UUs are called to stay with the text or the idea, whatever it is, until we discover beneath or alongside the transient pieces, the other stuff, the good stuff, that which is permanent. What do we mean by that which is permanent? Here's how Parker put it in his sermon. Quote, "If we are faithful, the great truths of morality and religion, the deep sentiment of love of man and love to God are perceived intuitively and by instinct, as it were, though our theology may be imperfect and miserable." So Parker thought it all boiled down to love to man and love to God. Parker said those are the permanent, eternal truths, and everything else could be let go. Would you agree to that? Or would you maybe use different words? I think many of us today might object to the use of the word man as a universal. Others might find the word God too limiting or too fraught with baggage. At the same time, though, we might resonate deeply with the idea of a universal flow of love among us. We might intuit, in Parker's words, a sense of divinity that connects us, but we might use different words to affirm it. Maybe those of the current theologian Rebecca Parker when she declares, "There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that I love." I think that's a more modern way of saying almost the same thing that Theodore Parker said. My point in all this is to say that I think that if Theodore Parker were here, he would tell us that in every generation, it's necessary for us to reinvent Unitarian Universalism. Our very heritage, weighty and hallowed as it is, invites us to do just that. In fact, it demands that we do just that. If he were here right now, he would ask, what is transient here at MUUC? What beliefs and practices are becoming obsolete that we might consider letting go? And what is the other side? What is permanent here? What are the values that animate our life together? How can we express those values in modern language, language that sings, art that moves, theology that builds strength and courage for these days? These are big questions. And these are also the driving questions that are behind the current effort to re-envision the UUA principles. Beyond simply rewriting them, UUs are now digging deeper, unearthing the values that have always undergirded the principles and working to express the values in ways that align better with our current times. This week in the midweek update, I put a blurb and a link to the latest draft that they've come up with, a new statement of our principles. In case you missed it, I also put it into today's worship reminder, so it's at the very top of your email inbox. I urge you to take a look. I think you'll be surprised. It's worth us talking about, and I will continue to talk about it. Here at MUUC, similar questions are driving our next steps process. For the last year or so, the board and I have been wondering about how we will move on as a congregation after the pandemic. How has our community changed? How have our families' needs and schedules changed? What do our elders need from us now? What should our priorities be going forward? Is it time for us to do some strategic planning or to make changes to our church structure and our decision-making processes? These are all huge questions, and we weren't sure where to start, so we turned to a group of UU experts for help in creating this discussion, and that's how we got our Next Steps consultant, Liz Coit. If you're one of the 70 people who signed up to talk to her, you know all about this already. But if not, it's not too late to join in. In the new year, the board will be thinking about how to move forward, what to do next in this process, and there will be more opportunities for you to take part. But now I want to hand over to Liz, who will give us an overview of what this Next Step weekend was like, what its goals and process was like. And then I will come back and wrap up with a prayer.
Good morning, everyone. It's very good to be here with you all at Melrose UU Church. I am a New Englander. I was born in Boston, and I'm really glad to be back with you all. And it's November. It's still a lot of leaves in Virginia where I live, but they're bare up here. That's what happens. I almost feel like that Reverend Suzanne captured the Next Steps weekend, even hearkening back to Theodore Parker. The word transient is as current today as it was then. And so in a short time, I just want to first give a great deal of gratitude, not just to the people I talked to, but also to the entire congregation for sticking it out and sticking through the pandemic together and being committed to each other and to the children and to each one of you. I want to thank in particular Jenny Wendrovius and Kathy and Reverend Suzanne for real attention and caring about this process so it works for the entire congregation. I love the committed leadership here. It stands out for me, and I have been in more than 25 churches as I've worked for Stewardship for Us, which is really built to help develop cultures of commitment and community in our churches. In a short time, because believe me, I could not give you in 6 minutes the allotted time what I can reflect on the church and the congregation. And that will come in a report which I'm promising myself to finish by Thanksgiving and turning over to you all. But in short, some basic reflections. I do want to say that after reading tons of documentation as well as talking to a lot of people, I really feel this is a better than average functioning church. It really is, and you should all be proud of how you've stuck together and worked together. There's a great deal of expertise in this church, but there's also a great deal of caring and willing to work on things. The stability and the continuance and the perseverance through the pandemic was a lot better. And this Reverend Suzanne and Dan Griscom and Bill behind the scenes back there, this is a better virtual service than I've seen in most churches, partially because Reverend Suzanne has access to the chat rooms and the virtual folks. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. But it's more interactive, and I think it's going to even be more so. It is also a very financially sound and strong church with both strong pledging, even through the pandemic, and fiscal management. So some of the fundamentals are very much here at this congregation. Overall, I revert to a different form of thought than Theodore Parker. I feel you all have brains, heart, and courage, very much like the Wizard of Oz book, and it's very nice to see it. Some additional reflections for further thinking is to be mindful that we do, as a denomination, we're really capable of thinking about spiritual and values-based services, service, and community. And we have upwards of 5 generations in our congregations now. And it's very important, as, again, Theodore Parker and Reverend Suzanne said, each one of our generations come to spirituality, community, buildings and space, money, each other, quite differently. And it will be continued that way. And if you see a bunch of kids with this, they're communicating, but how do we build community? It's our job to help figure that out. There's an article in the New York Times today about how baby boomers are also sucked into this. So, you know, young people aren't alone in what they do. There's also, I feel, I picked up that there might be some issues around communications with each other and more attentiveness to reading and looking at communications would be a big help. So it is a mutual responsibility to communicate and to be up to date on the communications that are out there. The third thing is, it was alluded to before, you know, we are a denomination of congregational polity. We make decisions together. We reflect. We respect each other's opinions. We build consensus to move forward. And decision-making processes is something that needs a look at, especially as you continue to figure out what this congregation is going to be like in the future. Now, Theodore Parker talked about transiency. I use the term that's becoming very current today called liminality. And liminality actually has some roots in anthropology about the moment, the rites of passage in societies are supposed to help people get through liminal change. What happened before, and then now what's going to happen in the future. In our world today, and Reverend Susan Frederick Gray has been speaking more and more about liminal space in times of change, is, you know, what was in the past is gone, but we really don't know yet what's in the future. And we're in this ethereal, not really, but, you know, we are sitting in some liminality as we try to look ahead and plan ahead. And so this is from Susan Beaumont, who is a very Christian-based consultant, but is also looking at liminality. Reopening our buildings and regathering the congregation physically will not resolve our sense of disorientation in our world today. We are stuck between something that has ended and that is not ready to begin. We are in transformative times, and this means that when you think about some of the presenting symptoms that brought me to your congregation, governance, strategic planning, and potentially down the road a capital campaign, I had to conclude that there's a reason to take a formal pause and to think about the liminal, what you do with liminal space is you build a learning agenda. And so my top recommendation is, before getting into the planning, really look at what is the learning agenda that you want to build strategic planning from. And this has to do with everything from what's happening in Melrose, what is happening with the 5 generations that is in this church and elsewhere, what are they doing? What's happening in Massachusetts, our country, what's happening with climate change here and abroad. Multiculturalism is definitely, and multi-generational issues are all on the table. So I'm going to actually quote Michael O'Connor from our session yesterday to say, God, that sounds like a lot of work. But in fact, in my experience, doing a learning agenda is a really invigorating part of this process. And it is possible to tap into younger generations to help collect information. And it doesn't take as long as it sounds like it does. So I really will be putting that forth and really helping to think about what is a learning agenda. Notwithstanding liminality, at the end of our session yesterday, for those who were with me, I hearken back to something Janet Bissix said in a morning session on Friday, which is, we just got to get back here. We just got to get back here. Got to get back to the garden. And we got to get back. And I think there is some real truth to that, and efforts should be made to get back here, but everybody to get back here on their own terms, and that takes a generational look. Certainly what has been missing for many is the physical, proximal, face-to-face, hugging, being next to each other, having coffee or sippy cup drinks. I mean, that's all very relevant. The pandemic was a trauma, and it'll be a lasting trauma with huge effects on kids who were in higher education at the time. It is a trauma, and our job is to pull people back, even though we may be looking at a generation of dissociative people that young age. It is our job as older generations to help them come back to being together again. And so that's how I want to end, is even though liminal space is dominating our epoch, our time, let's get back to the here and now together. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. As I said earlier, the community is on a journey of change, and each one of us is on a journey of change. And the journey asks us to keep walking. In our call to worship, we heard from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. He wrote, "Love, like a carefully loaded ship, crosses the gulf between the generations. We live not by things, but by the meaning of things. It is needful to transmit the passwords from generation to generation." To me, this speaks to our full hearts at this moment, in this place, where we who are here hope with all our hearts to transmit our passwords, to share our faith, to share this, our spiritual home, with new generations we have yet even to meet. To cross that gulf into the future, we will need both love and courage. Courage to let go of what no longer serves us. Love to help us make space for people we don't even know yet. Spirit of love, mystery of faith, grant that we, like our ancestors, might find that courage, might share that love, might build a church worthy of tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. Amen. Now for our closing hymn, Tom and I picked the anthem of the 60s generation. May it inspire us anew and remind us of our responsibilities to those who come next. Please rise in body or in spirit, for the times they are a-changin', by Bob Dylan.
Accept that it soon will be drenched to the
Thank you. If you would please join me in these chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please be seated. Our worship is ended. Please enjoy a quick postlude from Tom. After that, I want to invite everyone to a follow-up Q&A with Liz and me in the parlor, which is right through this door here, and then to coffee hour. Thank you very much for worshiping with us today.